Chris Godinez, licensed professional counselor, also the host of We Need to Talk on every Sunday at noon. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. The views and opinions herein are mine and mine alone. They do not represent the ACA, the APA, or any other therapist for that matter. I would like to thank my sponsor, BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/Chris Godinez. They are awesome. They're an online counseling service. So if you are in a state that, small town, and you don't like your counselor, but you also don't want to have to drive 100,000 million miles to get to a counselor, they are telehealth. So they will set you up with somebody in your state that is licensed and that is a master's level or a PhD level. If you are out of the country, BetterHelp.com/Chris Godinez can get you a counselor here in the US. And it will have to be obviously with a state that does not mind the counselors going over state lines and out of the country and all that sort of fun stuff. So don't get me started about Arizona. Anyway, the point being, BetterHelp.com/Chris Godinez. That's your person's to go to. So thank you, BetterHelp.com/Chris Godinez. Okay, so today's questions. Holy cow. Okay, so we had some questions left over from let's see. We're from this last show. Hello, I'm kind of it's hot. It's 106 degrees right now, and it's not that terribly late into the day. So what time is it? It's like 2:30. Dear Lord. Okay, I'm terrified I have borderline personality disorder. How do I tell the difference between borderline and post-traumatic, or maybe even bipolar? So I should probably do another show on that. So the misdiagnosis is very big with borderline personality disorder, because remember, borderline is born of trauma. It is born of trauma. So people who have borderline tend to have trauma, which means they probably have PTSD as well, and it gets misdiagnosed, and yeah. So borderline personality disorder has got characteristics. The biggest one is the fear of abandonment. So the biggest one is maladaptive behavior to try not to be abandoned. Emotional dysregulation. In other words, emotions go, through the roof at the drop of a hat. So it really would be a good idea to get diagnosed with somebody who can really thoroughly, and usually when somebody is diagnosed with BPD, if a good therapist will start working on the trauma that caused the BPD in the first place. And it does often get misdiagnosed with both PTSD gets misdiagnosed as borderline gets misdiagnosed with bipolar. So yeah, it happens because in the manic phases, there's emotional dysregulation as well with bipolar disorder. So yeah, so let me do a show on that, but do give me a couple of weeks because I've got other shows lined up first. So I will go in depth on that. So, post-traumatic stress disorder is different from borderline, but borderline is born of trauma. Bipolar, on the other hand, is chemical. It's the brain is being bathed, it's like the brain is dumping all the feel-good chemicals at once that causes the mania. I'm really simplifying this. And then it goes in the opposite direction for one of the bipolars. There's a whole bunch of different bipolars. I mean, you can have nothing but mania. You can have nothing but depression and then come back up. You can have, the bipolar 1, bipolar 2, there's a whole bunch of different bipolars. So it's a really good idea that if you are fearful of any of these diagnoses, to go get a psych eval so that you know what you're dealing with, and then make sure you are dealing with somebody who is competent and knows what they're doing. The other thing I suggest too is go to the Mayo Clinic and look up the criteria for all these different disorders, for PTSD, for bipolar, and for borderline. I'm not saying necessarily diagnose yourself, but knowledge is power. And then that way, if you're dealing with a therapist and they're trying to tell you something and you're like, that doesn't sound right, then you can be like, no, I don't have these symptoms. I have these symptoms, So knowledge is power. So I would go to the Mayo Clinic and I would look up borderline personality disorder to see what the criteria is. I would look up PTSD, see what the criteria is. And remember, borderline is born of trauma. So there's going to be some PTSD symptoms. And then bipolar to understand the difference between all of those. So that's what I would do. How long does postpartum last? Can that be confused with other diagnoses? Yes. Postpartum lasts usually not much longer than a year at the most. So if you're still suffering from depression, hormonal changes, etc., 6 months to a year after having given birth, I would definitely get it checked out. So I've had I've had some abusers claim that their partner was still having postpartum, 10 years later. I'm like, no, now it's major depressive disorder. That's two different things. So postpartum is caused by the hormones, again, the chemicals. So, you give birth to the baby and then all these hormones start changing and going back and forth and changing and coming back to whatever normal was before or not. And it can cause depression. It's called the baby blues, but it shouldn't last more than a year. It shouldn't last really more than 6 months. So if you are feeling like you're not yourself after having given birth, then yeah, you want to go get that checked out and make sure it's not major depression. Make sure that your hormones are okay, because birthing is huge on the body, guys. It's not an easy thing and it messes up things sometimes. So go get it checked out. Go get it checked out. Okay. What is the subconscious mind? Is that our inner dialogue? Okay, so deep questions. So the subconscious mind is messages that we got as a kid that run in the background. That's the inner critic, okay? Or the inner cheerleader if you're lucky, So the subconscious mind is stuff that's running in the background that we're not even aware of. So yeah, that can be from childhood things. That can be from messages you got as a kid. That could be, and it can be positive or negative. So the subconscious mind is all the stuff that's running in the background. And that's why you want to bring it into consciousness so you can choose, yes, this is something I want to have in my thoughts, or, ooh, wow, that's a really nasty thought. Where did this come from? Oh, hello, Aunt Bertha. I choose not to have you in my subconscious life. Thank you. Bye-bye. Go pound sand. So yeah, it's a good idea to kind of check that out. So yeah, the subconscious mind is our inner dialogue. It is. And it's we're not even aware of it. It's just running in the background. So if you're healthy, you've got a cheerleader that's like, hey, I love you. Good job. Keep going. You're great. That kind of thing. If you've got an inner critic, it's going to be like, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. You're just nasty. And that's what you got to work on, bringing to the forefront, figuring out who taught you that. Who is the critic in your life as a child? Who modeled for you criticism? Who was nasty? Who was mean? Who was telling you constantly you weren't good enough? And then you confront them. And you start confronting that inner critic and you keep telling it, nope. I'm not playing. That's not my thought. That is somebody else's thought. That is not my thought. Thanks for playing. Bye-bye. Right? So you push it out of your subconscious and you are aware and awake and mindful of what you are thinking. So mindfulness. So Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a Buddhist priest, wrote a book on mindfulness. And I think it's called On Mindfulness. So that's a great book. There's tons of books on being mindful or mindfulness. So those are all great books to kind of help start being mindful and being aware of what's running you, what's going on, what's happening. Okay, what issues are most caused in children of disordered parents? Well, okay, that could be a whole topic on its own. So disordered parents love to pathologize their kids, because they need an excuse as to why they're bad parents, and they blame the kid. And so they will say, oh, my child's ADHD, when in fact the kid is a normal kid and they're just intent on medicating them into zombiehood. So they will pathologize the kid. They'll claim that they have ADHD when they don't, or they'll claim that they've got some disorder when they don't. The most genuine thing that you will see in children of disordered parents is anxiety, because the kid is constantly walking on eggshells trying to figure out what's going to get him in trouble this second, So anxiety, depression, yeah, those are all things that kids of disordered parents have, for sure. OCD, yeah, that too. Because you're trying to stay safe. You're trying to stay one step ahead of the disordered parent, or worse, parents. So yeah, that is definitely something. Anxiety is the number one thing that I see in kids. And it's sad, because a child should not, nobody should, but especially a child should not be anxious. They should be carefree and enjoying their youth and, having fun and playing and discovering who they are. But with a disordered parent or two, the child is constantly having to walk a tightrope of not getting on either of their bad sides and doing what they want and being perfect. And it drives the kid crazy. It does. It just breaks my heart. I don't like that. So yeah, so anxiety is the number one thing I see. Depression, yeah, and depression and anxiety. Okay, how come my ex's counselor cannot see the dysfunction? Why does he keep going? I want to send an anonymous Me Too note and call him out as an abuser. Don't do it. Don't do it. So here's the thing. And I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. Not every counselor is educated on abuse. In fact, when I was going through my schooling back in the mid, 2003 to 2006, they didn't talk about domestic violence. They didn't. They skimmed over it. They just skimmed over it. They didn't want to get into it because it would involve the personality disorders. And at the time, the APA and the ACA were talking about getting rid of personality disorders because, the humanist therapists were like, we don't want to label anybody. And I'm like, go to one of the domestic violence shelters and tell me how you don't want to label somebody. So the thing of it is that a lot of the humanistic counselors want to gloss over and not label and not address the reality of personality disorder. So, you can put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. So whether you call it a personality disorder or you call it Harold, it's still going to be a personality disorder. So it made me really angry that they were talking about that with the DSM-5. Fortunately, they kept it in. Now they're talking about putting everything on a spectrum. I can respect that. I can absolutely respect that because yes, things are on a spectrum. People do slide into malignancy with a personality disorder. So counselors, especially if they're humanistic, refuse to label, refuse to acknowledge. I don't like that. And I understand the whole person-centered thing, but you do your client no good if you just sit there and agree with them and go, oh yes, of course, you're always right. You're always, yes, you're supposed to have a rapport with your client, but you've also got to be able to call them out on behavior that is absolutely inappropriate. Abuse is inappropriate. Name calling is inappropriate. I can't tell you the number of times when I was doing couples counseling that I would have to stop people and be like, you will not be name calling in this room. Sorry, I'm not going to put up with it. Nope. And of course the abuser would storm out at that point. And I'm just like, I knew it. So, a lot of counselors didn't get trained in personality disorders. A lot of counselors got this whole humanistic thing, which I understand. You need to have a good rapport. You need to really relate and feel for your client. But at the same time, you have to be able to guide them to correct behavior. And if you're just going to sit there and agree with them, you're not doing them any good. You want to challenge them. It's like, well, why are you doing this? What is going on here? What are you needing to do? And of course, with a narcissist, they're not going to stay in that kind of therapy. They're not going to, they'll go to a therapist that knows nothing about personality disorders, that's a humanist, that is not going to call them out, and that's going to agree with them on everything. So that's probably what's going on. And it will do no good to send a note to the therapist because the therapist is not your therapist. It's their therapist. So stay the hell out. Stay the hell out. It's not your problem. Not your problem. So stay far, far away from that. He or she is going to paint themselves as the victim, and they always do. So a villain, a victim, and a hero. Right? So the overt ones generally see themselves as hero. The covert ones always see themselves as victim, and you are always going to be the villain. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's an X. Let them paint themselves however they want. It's not your problem. They're going to smear you to everybody and their dog anyway. Again, not your problem. What they want is for you to engage. What they want is for you to fight back. So remember, in Kung Fu, martial arts, when an opponent is coming at you, if you meet force with force, they've got something to fight against. If they're going to be smearing you, you just go and let them take themselves down to the ground with their own force. In other words, if you don't respond, unless of course they're libeling you or smearing you, what is it? Libel and, my brain is gone. Libel and something else that's written or in public. yeah, then you would take them to court on that, because then it's like, oh, no, 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 no. Au contraire, you know. But if they're just smearing you, family, friends, and whoever will listen, what do you care? It's their life. They're going to be miserable and alone. So you go live your best life and don't worry about what they're doing, and don't worry about what they're saying to their therapist. It's no longer your problem. So the more you try to defend yourself against the crazy, the more crazy you look, and that's exactly what they want. That is exactly what they want. So don't play the game. Don't play the game. When does the smearing stop? Divorce accusations are insane, and I have children. Absolute destruction with little end in sight. Okay, so the good news is, the good news, bad news, the smearing doesn't ever really stop. It's kind of a good news, bad news thing. So it'll go in waves, and it depends on the level of crazy you are dealing with. So if you're dealing with somebody who is a dark triad, stalker, you know, antisocial, rules don't apply to them, you know, they're stalking, they're stealing, they're smearing, they're, you know, all of this stuff. You know, they generally don't ever really stop unless they see that there is a consequence that they are going to have to pay. The smearing probably doesn't ever stop, really. You know, sometimes when they get with a new partner, sometimes it'll stop, but then other times the partner will also be disordered. And so now they've got, you know, they're the hero, this new partner is the victim, and you're the villain, you know, and so they'll gang up and try to attack. So again, it's a matter of getting the kids into therapy, getting you into therapy, strengthening your self-esteem, strengthening your boundaries, understanding this is not you. This is not about you. This is about them. People who are spending their precious time and energy on this planet smearing other people are disordered. I'm sorry. There is too much beauty in this world to spend your time doing that. Healthy, normal people do not smear. Unhealthy people, disordered people do. So you want to get your kids into therapy. You want to get you into therapy. And then, you know, just recognize the smear campaign is a desperate attempt for them to make everyone think you're crazy so that the focus doesn't turn on to them. So eventually you just keep being you, and eventually, you know, most people are able to go, wait a minute, you know, they're on their 5th or 6th wife now, or husband. What's going on, you know? So yeah, don't take it personally. It really is them. It is not you. Are forgotten memories buried forever? No, not necessarily. So the way our brain works, God love our brain. When we deal with trauma that is too much, that's when we dissociate. That's when we go, whoop, nope, peace out, not dealing with this, can't handle it, bye-bye. And we forget key aspects of the trauma. That's part of PTSD. In fact, that's one of the criteria, is that we've forgotten key aspects of the trauma. We start remembering when we feel safe enough to do so. So oftentimes in working with my clients, you know, we work on self-esteem, we work on boundaries, we work on a safety plan, we work on, you know, how to regain safety again. And then the memories do start coming back, and it can be distressing. And that's, you know, that's when I recommend, okay, let's get you into somebody who does EMDR to deal with that particular aspect of the trauma or the drama. And then we'll deal with the, you know, talk therapy part of that. So, you know, you've got two-pronged approach so that we're working on this. And yes, they do find that memories start coming back when the client feels safe. So really, it's amazing to watch somebody be able to remember something that they had not remembered. And this is not, let me be very clear, this is not hypnosis. This is not like the McMartin case where false memories are implanted. It's just working on self-esteem and boundaries and safety that the person is naturally able to start remembering, because now they're safe enough to. Now that inner child or that inner young adult or that inner whatever is old enough, safe enough, feeling confident enough to start dealing with the trauma. And so then the brain allows us to remember. So yeah, they're not forgotten forever. Sometimes they are. You know, sometimes there's never that level of safety that's reached, you know, especially if there was intense trauma as a very small child. That sometimes, you know, when people tell me they don't remember their childhood, that's a red flag to me. That's like, okay, something happened. Because healthy people that had no trauma remember their childhood. They do. They just remember it, you know. So there is that. Okay. I'm curious as to why My grandiose narcissistic father-in-law is so in love, addicted, and worships the golden child, no matter what the child does. But my husband, who's a genuinely good person, can do nothing right. So narcissists love, and that's a misnomer because they don't love. They wouldn't know real love if it walked up and did the Watusi with them, which it does, obviously, because people get involved with them on a regular basis. So narcissists want themselves mirrored back to themselves. You know, everybody does, but narcissists more so. So when there's a golden child that they see themselves in, they don't see that child as a child or as an independent, separate person. That is them. That's the, oh, look, they're just like me. Oh, look, they're just like me. Oh, look, they're just like me. That's the most narcissistic thing in the world. It's like, no, they're just like them. Separate, independent person. So the narcissist will, you know, adore, supposedly, the golden child as long as they toe the line and do exactly what the narcissists want. And in the meanwhile, they have to have a scapegoat. Remember, it's the drama triangle. Hero, villain, victim. So, you know, you have to have a scapegoat in order for that to be happening, the villain, you know. And so they focus they project all of their negative stuff onto the scapegoat. They project all of their supposedly positive stuff onto the golden child, who's, you know, doing everything they can to stay in the good graces of the narcissist. And so even though the scapegoat is the one that actually has a moral compass and is a good person, the narcissist will hate them. You know why? Because narcissists don't have a moral compass and they hate anybody who does, and they want them dead. They hate anybody who's got boundaries, who's got self-esteem, who's got morality, who's got, you know, a moral compass, they want them dead. They want them dead. Did I mention it's really hot today? It is really hot today. So that's why that's going on. And honestly, at that point, you go low to no contact and you stay the hell out of it, because you're never going to change the narcissist. The narcissist is always going to be favoring the golden child because that's what they do. Normal, healthy parents and normal, healthy grandparents don't make it, you know, obvious, you know, or clear, this is my golden child and oh, you're the scapegoat. No, healthy, normal grandparents and parents don't do that. You love all your children. You love all your children. You do. You just do, you know, and every child is different. And that doesn't mean that they're bad or worse or better or anything else. It just means they're their own person with their own, you know, qualities and abilities, and you love them for that. So that just makes me angry when they do that on purpose, and they do it on purpose. They want to make sure that the scapegoat knows that the scapegoat is the scapegoat, so that the scapegoat stays in their place. That's why they do that. Okay, hang on. Why do we muscle armor? Okay, we muscle armor because we're constantly in a state of cortisol. So remember the amygdala. Right? Okay, left brain, right brain. Here's the amygdala, little almond-shaped organ about an inch inside of each ear. So this little guy is stupid, like truly 3 O's, stupid. Cannot tell the difference between a real threat, a thought about a real threat, a future daydreaming about a threat, like, oh, what if, you know, an emotional threat, a thought about an emotional threat, or some real event that's happened in the past. To the amygdala, it is all here now, here now, here now, here now. So we muscle armor because the amygdala is in a constant state of panic. So we're getting threats coming in all the time. When we're living in a dysfunctional family, it's not safe. It's not safe. So the amygdala goes, oh my gosh, I remember when this happened last time, and oh my gosh, I'm going to get hit, or oh my gosh, I'm going to get sexually abused, or oh my gosh, I'm going to get screamed at, or oh my gosh, I'm going to get thrown out of the house, you know, whatever. So the amygdala freaks out, tells the hippocampus, hypothalamus that sit on either side of it, we're in danger, we need cortisol. Cortisol floods the body, and then we start tensing up, and we're constantly living like this. We are constantly waiting for the blow. We are constantly waiting to get thrown out of the house. We are constantly waiting to get screamed. So we start muscle armoring. It's because we're tensing up, ready to fight, flight, run away, freeze, let the predator go on by so they don't see us, or fawn, give in to the predator so that we don't get killed. So we're in a constant state of tons of cortisol running through our body, lots of adrenaline, you know, and we're just like waiting. How many times, honestly, have we said, oh, when's the other shoe going to drop? When's the other shoe going to drop? When's the other shoe going to drop? That's a constant with us when we are living in abuse. We're just waiting for the shoe to drop. You know, things are okay now, but when's the shoe going to drop? And so we're on edge. We're walking on eggshells all the time. So that's why we muscle armor, because we're getting ready to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. We've got cortisol running through our body. We've got adrenaline running through our. That's why almost all of us have got adrenal fatigue. Yeah, don't get me started. So yeah, that's why we muscle armor. Okay, that one I already answered. Hang on. Let's see, how much time do I have? Ooh, got a few minutes. Okay, what happens if you have an extended family member that has very toxic traits and their parent protects them and or dismisses the behavior? How do we call them out? Well, you don't. So this is the thing, is that in toxic families, okay, and I was talking about this on Sunday, how the other parent would almost agree with what the toxic parent was doing. You know, like, you know, the toxic parent was cutting off the kid from their own checking account and taking their money and all of that. And the other parent did nothing. So it's kind of like they're agreeing with it by doing nothing. You know, when you do nothing in the face of evil, you're agreeing with it. Okay. And so it's the same thing in toxic families. If there's a family member that's being egregious and nobody calls them out, it's basically giving consent. It's saying this is okay. And if it's a really toxic family, nobody's going to speak up because they don't want to get bagged on. So in a toxic family, when one person calls it out and goes, this is not okay, the other family members then attack that person as opposed to the person who was being completely inappropriate. So basically you go no contact or you go low contact, and you don't try to call them out, you know, unless you're going to do an intervention of some sort. And even then it's kind of dicey. So, yeah, if they're toxic, you know, you can talk to other family members, and then I would go low contact or no contact, because otherwise it's like sharks. You know, if you call out the behavior and you don't have support and that family is toxic, they're going to go after you. So just be aware of that. I mean, and talk to other family members and feel them out. It's like, hey, have you noticed that cousin Joe does X, Y, and Z, and are you okay with that? And then, you know, talk to them. You know, but I'll tell you what, if they come back and if anybody uses that against you, then you know to go no contact with these people. Okay, so there is that question. Okay, when we heal the inner child, does that mean we get rid of the subconscious, not helpful patterns? Yes, when you are dealing with your inner child, when you are dealing with your subconscious, you are working on the maladaptive behaviors, because they're always driven by something from our past, usually from our inner child. So you want to identify maladaptive behaviors. So, you know, for example, I'll just use my own. So when I was a kid, my mom let me fall asleep in the car while she went grocery shopping, and I didn't wake up, you know, until she was like probably in the middle of the grocery shopping, and I panicked because I was probably, I don't know, maybe 4, you know. And so what I do find is that when I get into large stores and I lose sight of, you know, whoever I'm with, whether it's John or a friend or whatever, I start having that panic feeling, and that's when I have to kind of go, okay, little 4-year-old, you're fine. You're good. You're an adult. You're not alone in a huge parking lot and don't know where your mom is. You're okay. Everything's fine. Do you see where I'm going with that? So again, it's like identifying behaviors, or, you know, okay, what caused the panic? Well, it's the fear of being left alone as a little kid in this ginormous parking lot in this car, not being able to see your mom, you know, so having to work on that stuff. So yeah, dealing with the inner child is confronting and processing trauma that happened, things that our inner child did not get taken care of or didn't feel safe or whatever, and reminding them, I'm da mama now. I'm not going to abandon you. You're safe. You're okay. Everything's fine. So yeah, it's working on those patterns, and it's working on those behaviors, and it's kind of identifying, well, where did this start? Why do I hate large stores and not being able to see people I'm shopping with? You know, it's like silly things like that. But then serious things also, like, you know, I don't know, whatever trauma is going on or whatever behavior patterns are happening, you can trace back to something that happened in your childhood. And then you can process it and work it through. So yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right. So if asked a direct question by kids about their narcissistic parents' actions or behavior, tell the truth or don't tell to avoid bad-mouthing. Where is the line between telling the truth and bad-mouthing? Well, okay. So there is healthy, normal behavior, and then there is abnormal behavior. And it's not bad-mouthing to say, this behavior is not healthy. Because it's not healthy. So let's say that they're targeting the sister or the brother, and the other kid notices it. And you can say, that's not normal. Healthy parents love both their kids. They don't target. That's not bad-mouthing. That's speaking the truth. So bad-mouthing is when, and I hate this when divorcing couples use the kids as pawns, or they use the kids as spies, or they use the kids as messengers. Well, you tell that bitch that blah, 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 blah. And it's like, oh my God, do not do that to your kid. You want to screw up your kid? That's the quickest way to do it. Or your father's a player and blah, 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 blah. No. So what you do is you stick to whatever the question is from the child, and you point out healthy behavior, contrast and compare. Healthy behavior, unhealthy behavior. And that's not bad-mouthing. That's pointing out healthy behavior, unhealthy behavior. And if they're having questions, it's time to get them into therapy. It is. It's time to get them into therapy so that they have a safe place to vent, so that they can talk about what they are seeing and what they are hearing, and then they can hear it from a professional. Healthy behavior, unhealthy behavior. Do you see where I'm going with that? So bad-mouthing is when you start calling names, when you start, oh, they're a hoe, or they're a slut, or, something like that. No. Or, you're name calling, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No, that's bad-mouthing. Or, he was a terrible father and a terrible husband. No, the kids don't need to know that. All you got to do is point out healthy behavior versus unhealthy behavior. This is healthy, this is not. And you don't even need to say them. You use the example of what they give. You give an example of healthy behavior. Well, this is healthy behavior, but this is what you're describing to me. And that's all you do. So that's not bad-mouthing, that's being truthful. Of course, the narcissist or the abuser will say that you are bad-mouthing, but you don't use the kids to turn them against the other parent. Narcissist kids, with the whole parental alienation thing, sometimes they are successful in the beginning, and then eventually the child grows up and they are able to see clearly how they were manipulated. Other times the child grows up and becomes just like them. So again, nature, nurture, it's a little from column A, little from column B. So yeah, so bad-mouthing is never okay. Telling the truth is totally okay. Here's healthy behavior, here's unhealthy behavior. Okay. I'm terrified I'm a narcissist. My father was abusive. I see some similar behaviors in me, and I hate it, and I don't want to hurt anyone. Okay, so fleas. We need to talk about fleas. So when we are raised by disordered parents, we pick up fleas. We pick up behaviors that are not healthy. Oh my God, I've gone over time. So this is my last question. We pick up behaviors that are not healthy, that are fleas, that we've just learned from the abuser. So what you want to do is you want to get with a really good trauma therapist, write down all of the behaviors that you do not like, that you see that you do that remind you of your abuser, and then you start working on that. And you start working on the inner child, and you start working on the self-esteem, and you start working on the boundaries, you start working on the deal breakers. And as your self-esteem comes up and your boundaries get better, you find yourself doing less and less of that kind of behavior because you don't like it. You don't want to be like that. You don't want to hurt yourself. You don't want to hurt somebody else. So you want to squish those fleas. And the way to do that is to start addressing the trauma. So the books you're going to want is CPTSD From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. That will work on the trauma with the abuser. The Self-Esteem Workbook by Glenn Schiraldi. That will work on self-esteem. Boundaries. So that will be The Disease to Please by Harriet Breaker. And those 3 books are really going to help you. Then you also want to get with a really good trauma therapist to help you process all of this stuff. Granted, yes, you can do a lot of the work on your own, but if you're finding yourself stuck, or you're finding yourself just needing a little help or somebody to bounce ideas off of, that's what trauma therapists are for. So there's that. All right, kids, I've gone way over time and I got to get going. So I want to say thank you again to betterhelp.com/Chris Godinez and for being my sponsor and being awesome. So anyway, that is it. Have a great day. And on Sunday, I will be talking about the healing path, what you can expect as you go through your healing process. And so you're not surprised when things happen or don't happen or, you know, all of that stuff. So we'll talk about the healing path. All right. Talk to you guys on Sunday. Have a great week. Stay hydrated. Talk to you later. Bye.